Hey guys, it's Katie and welcome to my 100 subscribers Q&A. Before we launch into all of the questions, I just want to thank all of you so much for helping me get to 100 and actually surprisingly over 100 subscribers. It really means the world to me that so many of you are out there consuming my content, and some of you go out of your way to really interact with me, and I've made so many just lovely friends and met so many lovely people through my time here. And so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for all of this. And second, thank you for actually asking me questions. I was a little concerned when I kind of was in the planning stages of doing something like this because, 100 subscribers really isn't a ton of people, but you guys asked quite a few questions, and that's really exciting. And it's just going to make this Q&A even more meaningful, I think, in the long run. Now, I didn't get too many non-bookish questions, which is completely fine, but I hope it's interesting and that you guys learn a little bit more about me as we go. So let's just launch right on in. First person that I'm gonna pick is Emma from Emma Rosen Books. She wrote, "Yay, congratulations. How did you choose your channel name, and would you write a book?" I chose my channel name. Okay, I should probably just tell you this little story. So I actually had a channel before this, and it was just my name, and I had a lot of weird variety of things up there. And after a while, I decided that I should probably change it, not only to just kind of make it more bookish focused so that I could reach out to more people in the community, but also because I just want to be careful of my electronic footprint in a way, because you never know what people are going to find about you, and while there's nothing here that could be damaging or anything, I'm just treading cautiously. And A Sea of Tomes, it kind of came to me. I was really toying with a lot of different ideas for a bookish channel name, and then one day I was just kind of sitting around, not really doing anything spectacular, and it just kind of hit me. And then as I thought about it a little bit, I realized how wonderful the name actually is, because not only do I have a ton of books on my TBR, so it's like a sea of tomes, but I also love the sea, so I love the sea, and then I love books, and so I just kind of like smashed it all together, and it made it just so much more lovely that way. So I mean, there really was no planning going into how I picked my channel name, and it just kind of happened, and I am in love with it. Would I write a book? That's a good question. Years ago, I would have loved to. Right now, I don't think it's the right time for me to write a book. It's definitely something I've thought about a lot, but over the years, I've just lost any motivation I had for it, whether it's because of school or just other chaotic things that are going on in my life. So right now, I'm going to say no, but I'm not going to write it off. I'm not going to write it off and say never, because you never know what's going to happen. So potentially, I have no idea what I'd write about, but it's definitely something that I have in the deep crevices of my mind to pull out at a later date if I so choose. I am sort of part of a writing club. I say sort of because I can never go to meetings because of homework and life things and whatever. I just can't find the time to sit down and write with my crazy chaotic schedule. And it's not a priority for me right now, otherwise I might prioritize it and make the time for it, but I just don't have the time or the motivation to do it right now. I was just never satisfied with anything I was writing. I really lack confidence when it comes to a lot of things, but particularly when it comes to writing, and I just don't have time for that extra stress and stuff right now. But it's definitely sitting on the back burner somewhere for some later time. Linda from Linda's World of Books asked me 2 questions. One, if you could live anywhere in the world other than where you live now, where would it be? And 2, if you were to be able to have any book creature as a pet, what creature would it be and why? Okay, so if I were to live anywhere in the world other than where I'm living right now, if I were to stay in the United States, I'd want to move out west, maybe to Oregon or Washington, maybe Colorado. I've always kind of loved out west, the mountains and lakes and things. But if we're talking about other desires, because I definitely have them, I would definitely move somewhere in Europe. My family and I have actually talked about moving to Portugal one day, maybe, but I'm really open to just most places in Europe. I've just always felt more at home over there than I have in the United States, which I know might be weird, but I grew up in a really multicultural background, just my heritage and the things that we've done in the house and the traditions that we have and things. I've just done a lot of traveling, and I've just always felt more comfortable over there than I have here for a bunch of reasons. So yeah, it's either going to be out west of the United States or somewhere in Europe. Destination to be determined. If I were able to have any book creature as a pet, what creature would it be and why? First of all, how dare you? I love all of the creatures, and I would literally be Newt from Fantastic Beasts and adopt all of the animals and carry them around in my special little bag vault thing so I could have them all. But for the sake of the question, I might have to go with a hippocampus, which is basically a sea dragon. If you guys have read the Percy Jackson books, they're fairly heavily featured in The Sea of Monsters, which is the second book. And then if you look deeper into mythology, you realize that they could kind of skim across water like they're flying too. So I mean, they're just really cool creatures, and they just based off of Percy Jackson, they just sound so friendly and so nice, and I love that. So I'm probably gonna say them for right now, mostly because I just got off of a mythology kick and finished all of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. That is by no means the limit on my love for mythological creatures. Justin from Triumphal Reads. Okay, what's my favorite kind of animal? Next is, if I had to rank the main ROTE books in order of greatness, what would it be? And what is another genre that you would like to read consistently? I don't like any of these questions because they're so hard, but let's just tackle one at a time. Okay, with leaving the ROTE question for last because I'm screaming inside. Just letting you know. So favorite kind of animal. That's difficult because I tend to split them into 3 categories for no other reason than just because I can't pick what a favorite animal is. So I tend to split it by favorite air animal, like bird, favorite land animal, and favorite sea creature, and just go from there. And then I'll probably pick a top animal from the ones that I name, just for kicks and giggles. But let's see. Favorite air animal is definitely a red-tailed hawk. I love hawks, really, in any form, but red-tailed hawks are just super cool. Then favorite land animal is tied between horses and wolves, but I'd probably say horse wins out a little bit more. And then favorite sea animal is the dolphin. And out of all of those, I'd probably say my current top favorite is dolphin. And they're just such playful creatures. They're so incredibly intelligent, and there's more and more science coming out that have talked about their intelligence and the way that they live and things. And they're just honestly some of the most incredible creatures ever. Plus, I've had a deep fascination for them ever since I was a kid. Like, you remember those tiny little, like, scholastic books that you would get that would, like, focus on a specific animal or a specific event. And well, anyway, I had this one all about the dolphin, and I would read it over and over and over again because I just loved it. And they're just, as I said, such playful, intelligent, lovely creatures, and I just love them. And plus, I have collections of all kinds of dolphin figurines that I've picked up through my travels, so you could say I kind of collect them in a way. I just love dolphins. That's all you need to know. As for what's another genre I'd like to read more consistently, I guess one genre that I'd like to get into a little bit more than I already am is science fiction. I've tended to have a bit of questionable luck with sci-fi, and I've heard about some books from booktubers and also real life friends that have kind of piqued my interest, and I hope to get into them at some point and maybe find my category in science fiction. But another category I'd really like to get into is I'd like to read a lot more biographies than I have. I kind of recently decided that out of all nonfiction books, I tend to really, really enjoy biographies the most. They're just so captivating, and it's almost like reading about a character and just really delving into someone and their life and their works and whatever the biography is about. And I feel like that's something that I could delve into more because I'm finding them to be incredibly interesting. Like, as you know, I read the Leonardo da Vinci biography at the end of last year, and it was so phenomenally done and so captivating. And I just wish I had more time. I wish I'd spend more time reading biographies. So sci-fi and biographies in particular are some genres I'd like to delve into a little bit deeper. And now we're getting into arguably the hardest question I've been asked for this whole thing, and that is, if you had to rank the main ROTE books in order of greatness, what would it be? That's really difficult. I've avoided doing it for quite a long time because I've had several people ask me to do this before, and either I rank the trilogies but I don't rank the individual books, or I tell them what my favorite is and just kind of leave it at that. But I'm gonna try and scream about this question for a minute because it's going to be really difficult for me to order. But also, going in, just know that this is just my personal opinion. That does not mean that this is, how it is for everyone by any means. In fact, I'm sure that I have quite a few unpopular opinions with my ranking order that I'm going to share with you in a few seconds. So just know that going in. And I think what I'm going to do as I do this is name the book and maybe give a line or something as to why. Favorite book of the ROTE series is Fool's Quest. Then next, I'd probably put Fool's Errand, followed by Fool's Fate, and then The Golden Fool. Then next would be The Mad Ship, then Ship of Magic, then Ship of Destiny. And I'd go with City of Dragons, Blood of Dragons, Assassin's Fate, Assassin's Quest, Fool's Assassin, Dragon Haven, Dragon Keeper, Royal Assassin, and Assassin's Apprentice. I know that order might surprise some people, and honestly, I'm not 100% satisfied with it because, as I said, it's so nearly impossible to rank them, but in terms of, quote, greatness, because to me, this series is so intertwined with each other that it just keeps building on itself that it almost becomes impossible to separate them at certain points. And I know several people that have ranked the series, and that's fine. But for me, it's really, really difficult, and I'm just doing that because of what I'm feeling in the given moment. I don't necessarily want to say I'm sticking by that, except for Fool's Quest. Like, that is definitely 125% my favorite book of the series. But I'm not sure about the other ones, because Tawny Man and Live Ship, to me, just, they are the same caliber of books. I'd probably rank Live Ship just that much higher as a trilogy. But I don't know. I had a hard time with that. So just know that that's based off of how I'm feeling at this given moment in this day. Okay. Charlie from Reader to Writer just said, congrats on 100. My questions. First are, what other hobbies do you have besides reading? And second, what are your favorite times to read about with historical fiction? And what are your favorite subgenres of fantasy? Or what is your favorite subgenre of fantasy? My favorite time to read about with historical fiction. So my top 3 are always going to be ancient, medieval, and Renaissance. I can read as many books as I want from those time periods and never be bored, because there's always something interesting to be gathered from them. But after that, I'd probably say either 16th century or Victorian era England. I just find it really, really fascinating and like a really interesting time period and place to read about because of the societal aspects of it. There's a lot of social commentary done through like historical books and things, historical fiction and stuff. But honestly, I don't, besides the ones I named, I'll pretty much read anything if it sounds interesting to me. But for sure, the first 3 that I mentioned. As for my favorite subgenre of fantasy, it's probably epic fantasy. That's typically what I gravitate towards, but I also love high fantasy. So it's pretty tied between those two. And if you've been following my channel for a long time, you kind of know that, because epic fantasy is ROTE, and then high fantasy is Tolkien verse stuff. And as for my other hobbies besides reading, I have quite a few, actually. Some of my hobbies include horseback riding. I've done several different types of horseback riding throughout my life, whether it's dressage or hunter jumper. I've done both of those, and I really, really like both of those styles. Also did a little bit of Western at camps and stuff, but it's not something that I love in terms of style. I've always been more of an English rider than a Western. And then I also sail when I have time and when the lake is not full of weeds, which over the last couple of years has not been very often. But I really, really like sailing when I can. I am an avid traveler, so I've done a lot of traveling in my life. I've been to something like 20 countries and 4 continents, I think. I'm very, very musical, so I sing a lot. I've done all kinds of different vocal styles. I've trained classically, musical theater, tiny bit of jazz. I'm not a jazz singer. I'm not. And then I also sing just for fun in the car or in the shower or whatever. I did a lot of choir as a kid. My undergrad was actually really, really big musical school. We're really well known for our choirs up there. I was part of one of the non-audition choirs up there because I actually wanted to travel abroad, and if you're part of several of the other choirs, they either limit your abroadness or they basically tell you are not allowed, and I just didn't want to be part of the constraints of that. Music, oh yeah, and then I played piano on and off for 10 years. Don't ask me to play you anything. I haven't touched a piano in, God, I don't know how many years. It's been a long time. Unless it's, doodling out my voice parts or something. I haven't actually played a piano piece since, my senior year of high school. So yeah, it's been a long time. I think those are my main hobbies, besides booktube and reading. So traveling, sailing, horseback riding when I can, and music. So yeah, those are probably my main ones. Next are a bunch of questions from Book Girl Abroad, and I'm really excited about some of these questions actually. So question 1 is, who are some of your auto-buy authors? Next, tropes you always look for or bookish buzzwords. Next, some characteristics of your favorite characters. And that one's really interesting. Fantasy world you would love to live in, and favorite magical devices and favorite magical beasts. So let's just take one at a time. So first is, who are some of your auto-buy authors? Robin Hobb. I love Robin Hobb. J.R.R. Tolkien. A lot of stuff is now being published still posthumously by his son, or was. I don't know if we're going to really get anything else. Dan Brown. Not necessarily for his writing or his plots, but I just love the different areas that he pulls from and intertwines through different things. So Madeline Miller for sure. I love her works. Potentially Rick Riordan. I've only read one of his series so far, and I really enjoyed it. And I have all of his other books that are out currently, I believe. And I'm planning on devouring all of those at some point. I think those might be the main ones that I'd say for right now. Yeah, we'll go with that. Tropes you always look for or bookish buzzwords. For this one, I'm going to pick the bookish buzzwords because it's just a little bit easier. I am garbage for mythology, so if anytime a book or a blurb mentions mythology or gods or something like that, I am all over that. Same thing with anything that is mentioned with sea, whether it's pirates or ships or something along those lines. I'm usually going to be all over that. Assassins are definitely a big buzzword, especially since ROTE, but that is my standard, and it's a really high standard, so I'm a little bit pickier with it, but I also gravitate towards it. Wizards, witches, things like that. Definitely interested. If it mentions anything like ancient, medieval, Renaissance, art, like, I'm usually gonna be interested, at least enough to check it out. I guess those are some of them. I'm not really good at this, but for sure, mythology, sea-related things, ships and stuff. Horses, I guess, could be another thing, like talking animals. Ooh, no, that's another thing. Like talking animals or like telepathic communication with animals or something like that. That's kind of becoming a buzzword of mine. Like Arthurian legend retellings. That's definitely another thing that I'm interested in. I don't know, things like that. That's typically what I go for. Now, some characteristics of my favorite characters. Okay, so I love a good morally gray character. I love snarky, sassy characters. I love characters that are incredibly flawed, like very flawed. Endearing idiots, intelligent in some ways. Yeah, so those are, I guess, some of the characteristics I look for. It's kind of all across the board, but I love me some good morally gray, witty, snarky, stupid characters. It's just, yeah, it's complicated. Fantasy world I'd love to live in, by far the Shire or Gondor. The Shire is honestly everything. Definitely 100% live in the Shire. The community is phenomenal. The food, there's always food. There's always a good party. Always great storytelling. The scenery is gorgeous. The homes are so nice and cozy and just lovely. And so yeah. The Shire is my main place that I would want to live. But as I said, also Gondor because of their library. Like, they have an incredible library, and I would love to live there. I mean, despite all the battles and all of the crazy stuff that happens there, it would be cool to be like a librarian or something. there. Finally, favorite magical devices and or favorite magical beasts. Favorite magical devices, I love the even star. I love the idea of wands and magical staffs. I mean, I'm going with the, you know, typical cliches and stuff. Just basically all of the Tolkien things that he has in there for magical devices, I am a fan. Or, you know, Harry Potter. I like a lot of that mess too. And in terms of favorite magical beasts, let's see. I have a hard time with this one. As I said, I really like the hippocampus. I love sirens. I just like the idea of sirens and mermaids. Just merfolk in general. Let's see. I really like Pegasus or Pegasi. Cerberus. I'd want me a three-headed dog. Am I basically Hagrid? You bet. I don't know, just all of them, all of the magical beasts. As I said, I'm kind of like Newt in a lot of ways with the collecting of cool magical beasts. Would I want to be a megazoologist? Yeah, maybe. Hey, look, I'm in a new location. It's a different day, new location. My phone died last night, and by the time I looked at the clock, it was like 1 in the morning, and I'm just like, I should probably just do the sleep thing, and I can finish it up tomorrow. So yeah. So the next person who asked me questions was Kara from Wild Book Garden, and she asked a couple of questions. She asked, one, what's a subgenre of fantasy you'd like to get into but haven't yet? Like, for instance, historical fantasy, desert fantasy, etc. What's a movie adaptation you liked better than the book? And what Lord of the Rings species would you want to be, and which one do you think you would actually be? I really like these questions. They're super interesting and unique, and I'm just loving it. So let's just take one at a time. What movie adaptation do I like better than the book? Most movie adaptations that I've seen, I've liked either on par or liked the book better, you know, like you're supposed to. But an example of one that I really disliked the book but loved the movies is the James Bond series by Ian Fleming. I love the movies. Sean Connery is my James Bond, first of all. Also, just they're fun and they're great to see on screen. I really like all of the movies that they put out for it. But I read the first book last fall and I hated it. It was just bad in every sense of the word, and it ended up being one of my least favorite books of the year. So yeah, I definitely prefer the James Bond movies to the books because, yes. Then as for the subgenre of fantasy I'd like to get into but haven't, that's a good question. I'm always looking for more cultural fantasy, so as you kind of mentioned, desert fantasy, but also just Asian fantasy, African fantasy. I'm just really looking for more diverse fantasy, and it's nice because there's more of that coming out, and I'm finding myself kind of gravitating towards it a little bit. I mean, just having a nice mix of the types of fantasy I like to read. I mean, I mostly read 2 or 3 different types, so I'm not very out there in the types of fantasy books that I like to read, because as I said, I read mostly epic fantasy, high fantasy, and I dabble in urban fantasy, but I'm not a huge fan of it. I'd like to get into more cultural fantasy, and especially good cultural fantasy. Yeah, because as we all know, I'm a little bitter about a certain trilogy that had really bad cultural representation in it. But yeah, just kinds of things like that. I don't know if that makes sense. And then last question is, what Lord of the Rings species would you want to be, and which one do you think you actually are? So I'd want to be probably either an elf, of some species of elf. I'm not sure whether I'd want to be a Rivendell elf or a Lothlorien elf. There's a whole thing. There's a whole thing surrounding that. Read the Silmarillion if you haven't, because it explains the whole sub-race situation that goes on with certain races. It's really interesting. Would recommend. But I'd also probably want to be one of the Dunedain. They're also Silmarillion-y based, but we do know a character who falls into that category, and that is our dear friend Aragorn. They have all kinds of really cool and interesting features and traits that are associated with them. One of them being long life, and then also healing powers and stuff. And I'd be down with that. A little small part of me is very wants to be very Hobbit-like, but that ties in with the who I'd actually be. I would 125% be a Hobbit. I am very Hobbit-like. Ask anyone around me. I love a good meal. I love great company and storytelling, and just a sense of community, and just their little houses are just lovely. They have so much space, but like the perfect amount of space, and it's just so cozy. And yeah, they're the epitome of Hufflepuffs. And I mean, a large part of me identifies with Hufflepuff, so I mean, what's not to love? I want to be some kind of elf or a Dunedain, or maybe someone from Rohan because I love horses, but that's a little less. And I would actually be a hobbit. I mean, everyone knows this. Shelby from Read and Find Out, and she asked me a couple of questions as well. She said, can I still submit questions? I'm a tiny bit late. Yes, of course you can still submit questions, Shelby. It's totally fine. I appreciate it. I feel like I've asked this before, but what books would you use to represent yourself as a person? If I've asked that already, then an updated version with more books would be good. LOL. Also, if you could have a fictional career, what would it be? Okay, so for the books that I'd use to represent myself as a person, like, I'm assuming this is kind of going along with what Shelby does with her Shelby in books, where it's like she sees herself in certain characters, or sees certain traits or things that she really enjoys, or that are really core and important to her as a person in books. But if I'm misinterpreting, I'm sorry, Shelby. But one book in particular that I see myself in quite a bit, in every possible way, is the Rainwild Chronicle Quartet. There's a particular character in there who is pretty much me in every respect of the word, and that's Elise Kincairn. She is not only a scholar and has a deep fascination for languages and dragons and lore and stuff, but she's also made some questionable life decisions in terms of relationships. I totally understand where she was coming from getting into some of the relationships that she got into, but also, you know, got herself out of. I'm really proud of her for that. I've been in similar-ish situations to that, and I don't know, she's also got some kind of like lawyerly aspects in some of the later books, and she's all about preserving like ancient sites and things. She's like, this is the primary source, do not destroy it, don't touch anything, don't do anything, we have to sit and interpret it and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you're definitely a great historian, archaeologist, etc. person, and I am living for it. Plus just her personality in general, you know, making questionable life choices, but also very determined and carefree, and generally pretty happy, and, you know, stuff like that. I really see myself in Elise in pretty much every aspect of the word, as I said. She's arguably the person I identify with the most out of the entire series, which is saying something because I identify with quite a few people in that series, but she's the one that I really identify with the most. Another book that has a character that I really identify with is actually Harry Potter. I identify with Neville so hard. The never feeling like you're good enough, always failing, and just feeling down, being made fun of all the time because you're not good at things, or you're a little clumsy. You have to live up, you feel like you have to live up to certain expectations and things. I definitely feel like him in a lot of ways, but also just going on this whole journey to find that inner strength in order to do the things that he did at the end of the series. Like, I just connect with that journey and with him as a character so hard because of the trials that I've had to go through in my life. I have several disabilities, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, etc. And I've had a lot of trouble with getting professors and teachers sometimes to understand my side of things, and you know, having to deal with their prejudices and them asking me questions. Well, if you have this issue, then why are you even here? And I mean, it's just, I feel like Neville was asked that question a lot, particularly by Snape and McGonagall in some ways. And it's just, I know what Neville went through, and especially as I got older, I came to appreciate and have a deeper understanding and a deeper connection to him as a character than I did when I was a kid. Because, you know, when I was a kid, I was all about, oh my god, Harry, Ron, Hermione, they're the best things ever, and then Draco's like dumb and evil or whatever. Like, just very much in that kind of one-track mind of like, what's on the page is what is being conveyed. But then as I got older and I reread it several times, I got so many different things out of the series, and I just really connect to him. I know that there are more of them, but overall it's just kind of been we're just gonna stick with those two for right now. And as for fictional career, anything with animals, really. I've always been a deep lover of animals and things, as I've mentioned several times in this video. But also, so maybe a magazoologist or something. But I'm also down with something, I don't know, something flexible, something that allows me to do several different things. Mostly when I think of fictional careers, I think of, you know, Harry Potter, because they actually talked about that at length. I'd be down with working in, I don't know, government, or as I said, magazoologist or something. But I don't know. I've never really thought about it in depth before. But so the last 5 questions I have are all from Vendi from Caught Between Pages. And as I said, there are a lot, and I'm really excited for them. So here we go. So the first question she asked was, do you have a bookish bucket list, or bookish things that you'd like to do, or books you'd like to read before you die? And if so, can you share your favorite items from it? 2, what are your favorite and least favorite places you've ever traveled to? 3, would you want an ROTE mini-series? Well, mini is maybe the wrong word for those beasts. And if so, do you have a fan cast for your favorite characters? 4, what's your favorite book-related memory ever? And 5, do you have a list of books that you just will not read? Not for any real reason other than you just don't want to. Okay, Vendi. These are a lot of questions and I'm loving them. So let's just tackle one at a time. First one is, do you have a bookish bucket list, or bookish things that you'd like to do, books you'd like to read before you die? And if so, can you share your favorite items from it? I hesitate to say I have a bookish bucket list, but there are bookish things that I'd like to do. Like, I'd like to go to as many libraries in as many countries as I possibly can, especially obscure, ancient, medieval libraries, because it's my brand, man. I can't miss out on the ancient libraries and things. Like, this is one thing that I would love to do, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it, and that is, I must get into the Vatican Library. Like, I have to get into the Vatican Library someday. The need is so great because, one, they have so much stuff there and they're just hoarding it, and they only let certain people go in, and typically it's, most of the time, it's if you are writing like a research paper, you actually have to write a petition, and you have to like go through this whole long, lengthy process of getting into the Vatican Library. I'll never forget, I went to Florence and I had a professor. She's one of the greatest people ever, and she actually got into the Vatican Library, I think twice. And I'm just like, Jody, please get me into this library somehow. So I mean, ideally, I'd love to get in the Vatican Library. Don't know if that'll ever happen. I'm frustrated by that whole situation mess thing. I'd also, I don't know. There's just I have a deep fascination for and love for libraries and things, so I'd love to do that. Let's see other bookish adventure things that I've got. I don't know, reading certain books in certain places, maybe. Yeah, it's more of kind of like a whim kind of a thing. So for instance, like if I know I'm going to a certain place, I'll look up specific events and certain places that are kind of like must visits. But we also kind of like to look for like the obscure places because that sometimes can be a little bit more interesting than the big touristy attractions. I'll never forget going to Croatia, and we went to this little place called Pula. And Pula has one of the best Roman amphitheaters I have ever seen. Like, it's so perfectly intact and it's so well preserved, whereas if you go to the Colosseum in Rome, it's falling apart at the seams because of all of the pollution and all of the stuff that's going on around in the city, and it's a mess now. And they actually, sometimes I think they might restrict access, but finding this little place in Croatia, Pula, like it's such a lovely place, and I can't recommend going there enough if you haven't been, but Fendi, you've probably been. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to say I don't have a bookish bucket list, but I kind of do at the same time. It's kind of not written down and it's pretty spontaneous in some ways, but the Vatican Library is definitely, high on my list. For the books I'd like to read before I die, all of the ones on my TBR, which is, shrunk significantly in the last couple of months because of some things that I've done to make my life a little bit easier. But other than that, I'm sure there are several books I know for a fact I really want to read before I die, but really it's just all of the ones that are on my TBR, for at least for the moment, because that can change in an instant, as we've seen. What are your favorite and least favorite places you've ever traveled? Okay, so I can't do that. I'm going to explain why. It's mostly because picking a favorite out of all of the unique and diverse places I've traveled, it's impossible to compare the experiences and the places that I went. So my objective favorite is not real because I got something out of every single place I went. And that also touches on the least favorite places I've traveled. I mean, there have been some like sketchy places in certain places we were, but that didn't mean it was my least favorite place I've ever traveled to, you know what I mean? And I also, even if you have a negative experience somewhere, you still get something out of the trip. You still have all of these, unique experiences and these memories and things that it's impossible to just say, oh, this is my favorite and this is my least favorite. But I mean, let's put it this way. Are there places that I'd love to return to out of the places that I've traveled? You bet. A lot of the places that I went, just most of the places I went, I'd love to go back someday and, explore a little bit further and something, I don't know. But there are definitely also places I've never returned to. And I guess that is just more city-based. Like, there were some cities that I've been to in certain countries that I just know I have no interest of going back to. So for instance, Thessaloniki and Greece, a little sketchy. There's lots of stuff in the area. They have lots of really cool museums. It's right on the border of Macedonia, and they have a lot of really cool historical sites close by. So I mean, for that reason, like, it's a cool place, but I really have no desire to go back to that specific city because of the vibe and stuff. It just wasn't my favorite place that I was in Greece. Same thing with There are one or two cities in Morocco that I wouldn't go back to. I'd say probably Meknes and Marrakesh had a lot going for it, but I wouldn't stay there long. It's not my favorite city. It's very, I don't know how to describe it, because Morocco is a very unique and interesting place because it has the, you know, the old part of the city and then the new parts of the cities, at least where we all went. And from that aspect, there were certain parts of certain cities that I liked and certain things that I didn't like. Like, I loved Fez, but we also stayed there the longest. I also really liked Rabat. Like, there are certain aspects of certain places that I really, really enjoyed and really didn't. I guess maybe a better question would be, what are my favorite places in a specific country that I've been, and least favorite countries in a country that I've been? But I mean, that's also difficult. I've been to 20 plus countries at this point, including islands and things. Through each country and island and kind of talk about my experiences, but that's maybe a video for another time, question mark. If that's something you guys would be interested in seeing, if you're travelers like me and you're interested in some of the things that I have to say, or interested in going to certain places, I can probably give you recommendations for stuff depending on how long ago I was there. But yeah, for now, I'm just gonna say it depends on the place, depends on the country, depends on a lot of different factors. But as I said before, having a favorite and a least favorite of things is just difficult to say because of the experiences that you would potentially have. Am I making sense? Probably not. Okay, we're moving on. Would you want an ROTE miniseries? And if so, do you have a fan cast for your favorite characters? So I have very, very complicated feelings on this question and this exact topic because it's something I've thought about a lot. If I got some kind of adaptation of ROTE, it would not be films. I do not want these books turned into movies. They would do a bad job, just no. So if they were to do anything, I'd say do a TV series, like kind of like Game of Thrones, similar to what they've done with that. However, it would be very, very difficult to adapt because of the way the books are written. The magic system is going to be very difficult to portray properly in a visual media form. And it would be, I mean, I'd be interested to see what they did with it, but I don't know if I would like it because a lot of the way it's done is kind of telepathically, and that would just be a lot of random silence, except for like voiceovers and stuff with random action. So I mean, that could be interesting cinematically, but at the same time, I'm not so sure. So I would like a TV series, like Netflix to adapt it, or HBO or something. Like, it needs to be a specific network. I will not settle for anything that is not HBO, Stars, or Netflix. Maybe Amazon, but that reaches, weirdly enough, a smaller audience, I think. As I said, I have very complicated feelings about that. As for who I'd fan casting my favorite characters, that's also difficult because there are some characters who I just cannot figure out who I would cast as them. Like, I thought I knew, and then as time went on, I changed my mind. It's tricky. I hesitate to say some of these characters because some of, you know, talking about them, some of them are a little bit spoilery. But, I mean, they're the ones that stick in my head the best. So there's this one character that we come across down the line. His name is Prilkop, and he is literally Idris Elba. Like, convince me otherwise. I dare you, because Prilkop, Idris Elba, is just he would be the perfect person for that role. And in terms of Kenneth, I would actually, weirdly enough, cast It's a mixture. I'd either cast Johnny Depp or Darren Criss. Probably more Darren Criss because of the way that Kenneth portrays himself and whatnot. I mean, he acts like Jack Sparrow, which is why I say Johnny Depp, but at the same time, the way that he gives himself off would be right up Darren Criss's alley. Plus, I saw a picture on Tumblr, and I can't get it out of my head now. And if I can find it, I'll link it down below so you guys can also scream with me about Darren Criss in this photo, and just he would be a really great Kenneth. And as for the Fool, young Fool, because you know the books span like 60 years of Fitz and the Fool's life. Young Fool would be Chris Colfer, like hands down. That's who I imagine in my head. That's the voice I hear when I'm reading that character. It's just perfect. But older Fool, I think Tilda Swinton would be phenomenal. Phenomenal. Okay, great. I'm glad we had that talk. I can't fan cast Fitz. Like, I literally cannot fan cast Fitz. It's impossible for me to fan cast Fitz. I've tried so hard, and I whenever I see people's suggestions, I'm like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that idea for Fitz. Like, I get what you did, but I don't agree. But I also don't have anyone better. So I don't know yet, because it's hard to cast the character of Fitz because of just so many reasons. Just don't do it. I also have a hard time casting Night Eyes. That's also really difficult. Like, I have a voice in my head and it matches up with somebody, but I can't pinpoint who that person is. So that makes it a little bit more complicated. I think a good Tintalia would be Cate Blanchett. Like, that would be ideal in terms of Dragon Queen. Like, just I hear her voice in my head and just it works really well. Shade would be David Bradley. He played Filch in Harry Potter. Like, just he's the best Shade. Like, convince me otherwise, please. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna stop now though, because it's difficult to do otherwise. Favorite book-related memory ever? Bendy. I can't pick a favorite book memory ever. I have plenty of great book memories. I've talked about several of them in my memory book tag, but I don't know. Let's see. What is my favorite book memory, or one of my favorite bookish memories? A lot of the ones that I talked about before, I just particularly reading Order of the Phoenix in bed with the sun shining in the room and just illuminating the entire room while I'm reading this book at 8:30 in the morning. That was such a good memory. I don't know what it was about it, but it was just so peaceful and calming, I think, despite what I was, reading at the time, because Order of the Phoenix is a bit grim. But I really enjoyed that particular memory, but it's hard to say whether it's a actual, like, 100% favorite, but it's definitely up there. You have a list of books that you just will not read, not for any real reason other than you don't want to. So, yes, this whole notebook that I wrote things in, where I took books out and off of my list last year, this year, etc. I'm just going to go through every page and just show you how many books are on that list, because it's quite a few. We're almost there, I think. Maybe. Yeah. So yeah, I do. Most of the books on here are books that I just don't want to read because I either lost interest or it just doesn't sound appealing to me anymore or something. There are a few on this list that there are reasons for me not reading. It's kind of like my backup list for if I finished my TBR. at some point. Not gonna happen. And I'm like really desperate for something else, I'll just kind of flip through this notebook and maybe look up something if the title intrigues me, and then I'll go to Goodreads or something and decide whether or not it's something I want to read. But this is kind of my like backup if I get desperate notebook. But books that I really have no other desire to read, or that I have reasons that I don't want to read, it's a really long list. And if you watch the video that I did at the end of last year, where I said basically I removed books from my TBR and I wasn't going to give reasons why, 95% of the ones in this book are like that. I have since removed more since I made that video, but it's kind of a complicated relationship because some might be a mix. It's like I have no reason for reading this, but I also have a few reasons for not wanting to read this. So yeah, but to go through this whole notebook again is just difficult. So I'm just gonna link my video up above. But I might, if I can find one, let's see. Okay, I picked out some Mark Greaney books. I think that's how you say them. Such as like Support and Defend and Full Force and Effect. These were part of the Jack Ryan series, and they were just like extra supplemental stuff written by other authors about the Jack Ryan series, it's my understanding. And I just don't want to read that. I don't care. I don't even know if I like the Jack Ryan series. Yeah, I've seen the movies, of course, or the movie. I don't remember if there's more than one. But I don't want to be part of that. Another one I took off is The Seafarer's Kiss by Julia Ember. I don't know, it just didn't appeal to me so much anymore, and I'd heard some questionable things about it, so that's one of the mixed ones, like meh. I'm meh on the blurb and stuff, and then I looked a little at the comments, and I'm like even more meh about it, so I was just like, okay, bye. I took off this one book called The Chronicles of Arenacea by S.M. Lee. It's a female queer book. I think it's a series. Book plot sounded a lot like so many other books I've read, and while it is diverse, it just didn't. I feel like I can find other female romantic fantasy books down the line. Like, I know I have some other ones down on my list, but that's another one that I took off. I finally decided to get rid of The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I just had no desire to read about it. I mean, even though it's something that I am arguably interested in some way, shape, or form, because I'm a classicist and stuff, but at the same time, it just, I don't know, it sounds weird, and I just kind of lost all interest in reading it. I think those are the main ones that don't have reasons associated with them. That is all of the questions. It took me a day, and I swear to God, a day and a half to film this. But I had a really good time, and I want to thank all of you again for all of your questions, and thank you all for subscribing and supporting me. I really can't thank you enough. And plus, thank you for your wonderful all of the wonderful friendships that I've made through this journey and this process. And you know, I'd love to talk to more of you. If you guys, you know, I'm promise I'm not that scary. Feel free to either drop me a comment or come find me on Twitter if you have one, because I know not everybody has a Twitter. We can, you know, chat over there and kind of get to know each other a little bit better and stuff. But yeah, that's, you know, sort of all I've got. And never hesitate to ask me more questions that are book related or even not book related if you want. And you guys know the drill. As I said, Goodreads, Twitter, feel free to comment and talk to me about all the things and any of the things you want, either something you heard about today or anything that strikes your fancy. And I'll catch you guys later with another video soon. Bye!